Musk nods, a small yet significant gesture. And at that instant, the chat seemed to have sown a small spark of something more, something worth considering. This was the kind of spark that could ignite both the soul and the mind. Jordan Peterson changes the topic, his voice calm, yet with silent intensity. Elon, I want to sketch a parallel for you, he says. You have devoted your life to meeting enormous challenges. You exceed the limits of what is practical. Your path, in some respects, reflects some of the fundamental Christian lessons: faith, pardon, bravery. These are not only ethereal qualities, they are the basis of significant action. Whether you realize it or not, they have a significant influence on your work. Musk seems fascinated but wary. His analytical style shows in his listening. Peterson keeps leaning forward slightly, as if to underline the importance of what he is saying. Consider religion, for instance. Faith is a vision of a future yet to come, not mindless confidence in the unattainable. It's what enables you to face uncertainty with action. With SpaceX, is that not what you are doing? Though no one has done it before, you believe humans may evolve into an interplanetary species. You have invested billions of dollars and many hours into something that might collapse right now. Isn't that a sort of faith? Musk scrutinizes the point and tilts his head. You could certainly arrange it that way, he says. But I consider it not to be faith. It seems to me as a probability. Success is within reach if the physics goes accordingly and if the engineering is sound. Peterson remains consistent. What motivates you to pursue such a risk? Why would you gamble your entire life on something so far from assured? Not only is science involved here, Elon. Belief is what I have in mind. You have a conviction that what you are doing counts not only for you, but also for mankind overall. And that conviction, that belief in something more than yourself, is a profoundly Christian concept. Christianity is based on the idea that we are a part of a greater narrative with a divine goal. This is what inspires people to act in front of uncertainty and anxiety. Musk nods slowly, his mind clearly racing. Peterson veers somewhat to introduce the topic of another pillar of Christian philosophy. Then there is forgiveness, he replies, his voice now quieter. You often discuss creating a better future and addressing issues endangering the survival of humanity. The fact is, though, that humanity is imperfect. We make errors. We disappoint one another. Still, forgiving is what will enable us to advance. It's what keeps relationships strong. It's what heals scars. It's what gives us hope to try again. There is only division and hopelessness without pardon. Musk's tone turns to one of greater seriousness. He agrees that forgiving is crucial, but I consider it to be a necessary practicality. If people harbor lifelong resentment, they cannot cooperate. It is inefficient. Peterson laughs gently, but his answer is purposeful. Elon, it goes beyond mere efficiency. Forgiveness is an act of grace, not only a tactic. And the Christian narrative revolves mostly around grace. Imagine Christ on the cross, pardoning the very people who turned against and crucified him. Efficiency has no bearing on that. That relates to unconditional, selfless, sacrificial love. And that kind of love is what allows actual development. Musk says nothing for a minute, his eyes far off as if he is looking for the correct reply. Peterson lets the stillness linger, then slants back slightly, as if getting ready to deliver his last point of emphasis. Courage, Elon, you ask. Let's discuss bravery now. Every outstanding accomplishment in human history has needed it. And bravery is the will to act, in spite of dread. It is not the lack of fear. Another firmly ingrained Christian principle is that stories of individuals entering the unknown and risking everything because they felt a greater purpose abound throughout the Bible. Peterson pauses momentarily, then turns to tell a tale he knows would appeal. Consider Moses, for instance. From slavery in Egypt, he guided the Israelites across the wilderness to reach the brink of the Promised Land. That was a spiritual trip, rather than merely a physical one. He had not found all the solutions. He had no idea what the future might include. Though the odds looked insurmountable, he hoped that God was directing them, and he had the courage to act on that hope. Musk slants slightly forward, obviously intrigued. Peterson goes on, his voice steady and strong. You are, in many respects, guiding a modern interpretation of that trip. You are bringing mankind into unexplored ground, into space, into technological frontiers. Like Moses, you also have no idea exactly how it will all work out. But something motivates you, a hope, a vision, a conviction that the future may surpass the past. Isn't that the essence of faith? Assuming two of the world's smartest minds discuss one of the most important topics. And what happens? Renowned psychologist and thinker Jordan Peterson conducts a groundbreaking discussion with none other than SpaceX and Tesla visionary Elon Musk. Still, this is not your usual discussion of electric cars or rockets. No. This time, Peterson delves deeply into something far more personal, far more potent: religion. From the earliest minutes, Peterson challenges Musk on the very core of life. What gives it meaning, and why some of the most brilliant brains in the world think that the lessons of Jesus Christ hold the key to grasping it all. When you have all the riches, success, and power in the world, yet still struggle with more fundamental concerns? In a society sometimes feeling unsure and divided, what does it take to discover real purpose? Throughout the interview, Peterson questions Musk about his place in the world as much as his ideas. He probes him about the moral standards he uses to make judgments, therefore forcing him to evaluate whether those values are based on something greater than himself, something everlasting. Peterson addresses the very basis of civilization, the principles that will shape our future, and the part faith plays in creating a better world. Not only about religion. Still, it's not only intellectual reflections. Peterson wants Musk to venture beyond, towards something that would permanently alter his life. This dialogue explores faith, purpose, and the search for truth, rather than only serving as an interview. Stay around, since you will not want to miss what comes next. Jordan Peterson initiates the discussion by posing a fundamental question. Elon, what are your beliefs? His voice is controlled, but sharp. From whence does your perspective center? His methodical and probing comments seem to pierce deep into Musk's mind. Musk pauses, his eyes blazing with ideas, the typical expression of deliberate introspection taking over his face. He starts gently, as if weighing every syllable. I encountered Christianity while growing up in South Africa. When I was a little child, I attended an Anglican Sunday school. Given my admiration of many of the moral principles and teachings, you may classify me as a cultural Christian. However, he pauses, the weight of his words evident in his voice. I would not say I believe in the conventional sense. Certainly not in the idea of a divine creator intervening in human affairs. Peterson's eyebrows raise just a little. His eyes are fixed and relentless. You are therefore saying you value the framework, but reject the basis? His voice is gentle, but focused as he asks. You stop short of embracing the underlying reality that underlies the ideals Christianity has provided to civilization: truth, compassion, forgiveness. But you may recognize the values themselves. Musk shrugs gently, a small smile pulling at the edge of his mouth. Those ideas, in a sense, are universal, rather than exclusive of Christianity. They originate in human nature and in the development of societies. Surely God is not necessary to defend them. Peterson slants forward, his intensity obvious. But Elon, that's where it becomes fascinating. These values did not appear suddenly. They surfaced via a narrative that molded Western culture. This narrative recounts the story of a God who chose to be born as a servant, not as a monarch. This is the story of a God who chose to endure suffering and to sacrifice his life for the sake of others. That is a revolutionary way of seeing life, not only a moral lesson. Do you not find that amazing? Musk muses over this, his arms crossed in contemplation and his posture slightly changing. That story clearly has influence, he says. It has undoubtedly shaped history. But I find it difficult to match the metaphysical aspects with the environment I live in. At essence, I am a scientist. I work with data, evidence, and what is measurable and testable. Peterson nods, noting the idea, but not backing down. Your career has been based on stretching limits, challenging what is feasible, reinventing what mankind can accomplish. Is it not possible to quantify the most important truths with tools, or reduce them to statistical points? Suppose the inner existence is the greatest frontier instead of outer space. What if the most transformative investigation is of the human soul rather than of Mars? Musk's tone darkens as he fixes his gaze on Peterson. He says, his voice steady but quieter now, "I'm not discounting that possibility. I simply have no idea how to approach it. It lies outside my field of knowledge." That's exactly the point, Peterson says in a soft but firm voice. Faith has nothing to do with knowledge. It is not based on certainty. It is about amazement, about curiosity, about the readiness to venture into the future. For example, the Christian narrative is not a scientific hypothesis that requires verification or refutation. It's a lens, a means of perceiving the world that links our life to something greater and gives the turmoil significance. You have created rockets meant for skyward ascent. But what if the skies already reach down to us? Musk reclines in his chair, his face invisible. The atmosphere appears momentarily electrified with unsaid tension. At last, he says, "I never considered it like that. I have always concentrated on concrete issues: energy, transportation, the survival of our species. I have always felt that meaning is something we create, not something handed to us." Peterson responds swiftly, his comments incisive, but not aggressive. Perhaps it is both as well. Perhaps meaning is a gift as much as a chore. We both discover and create meaning. Look at what you have accomplished with your companies: Tesla, SpaceX, and Neuralink. You have developed methods that motivate hope and guide you toward a future worth aiming for. In a way, then, it is a mirror of the Christian concept of atonement. It embodies the conviction that the future can surpass the past and that the shattered things can find restoration. Musk softly nods, his face softening. "I can see how that matches some of my objectives," he says. "Still, I'm not certain how it relates to faith. I do respect the narrative, really. I find its cultural importance really great. But I find it difficult to leap that way." Peterson's voice changes to become almost paternal. "Elon, you need not leap all at once. Faith is a road trip rather than a one-time choice. Just like any journey, faith begins with a single step. Perhaps that's just realizing that the world is more than what we can see or quantify. Perhaps it's being receptive to the possibility that the beloved narrative you value could be literal, rather than only metaphorical. There are long pauses. Musk looks down for a while, his hands resting on the arms of his chair. His voice is softer and more reflective as he speaks once more. I guess I can understand why some find significance in it, and perhaps there is more involved than I have let myself think about. In all honesty, I do not possess all the answers. Peterson smiles, a faint but real sign of satisfaction on his face. That is all anyone can ask, Elon. It's important to maintain curiosity, even when we don't have all the answers. It's crucial to continue asking the crucial questions. After all, doesn't that drive innovation? Isn't it the readiness to question, to dream, and to investigate? Faith is the ultimate exploration, not different at all. The fight is worthwhile even if you cannot see the result. Musk lets out a breath, his face a mix of reflection and something deeper, perhaps even sensitivity. I see the parallel, he replies, after a protracted silence. I'm not sure I would describe it as faith, but there is unquestionably responsibility involved. Regardless of the challenges we face, we must always strive to progress forward. Peterson nods, his voice once more softening. That is the core of what Christianity advises. We must act courageously, extend forgiveness, and maintain hope for the future. This is not due to our certainty of success, but rather to our belief in something greater than ourselves. And that conviction may change whole cultures as well as people. The discourse lingers in the still room, creating a brief silence. At last, Peterson says, Elon, you have already done so much. Still, the biggest frontier is not Mars, artificial intelligence, or renewable energy. It is the human spirit. You may discover as you travel that faith is something you carry rather than leave behind. Musk nods slightly, his face reflective, as though Peterson's comments have resonated more deeply than even he could have imagined. The discussion has descended into a region of thought, possibilities, and hope, rather than merely debate or analysis. Jordan Peterson's voice changes as the chat becomes deeper. It turns from academic to personal, as though he is addressing Elon Musk, the man, rather than just the brilliant entrepreneur. His voice softens, bearing the weight of someone who personally has battled these facts. Elon, Peterson explains, I believe that the reason Christianity is so fundamentally distinct from any other perspective is that it is not about attaining atonement. It is not about ascending a ladder to approach God. It concerns God descending the ladder to meet us. It's about grace, a free gift handed not because we deserve it, but rather because we need it. And none of intelligence, riches, or success can substitute for it. Musk tilts his head slightly and has been observing the talk with deliberate earnestness. That makes it passive, though, and I have always believed in acting, finding answers, and realizing success through diligence. Peterson nods as though he expected this inquiry. He smiles. I know why you would find that, he says. But grace transforms rather than being passive. Admitting grace does not imply we stop trying or working. We quit attempting to save ourselves at that point. We quit bearing the intolerable weight of our thoughts, since we believe we can solve everything on our own. This is an invitation to rest, not give up, but trust that we are not alone in the struggle. Musk's voice gets tighter, as though he is considering the ramifications. But why would God give anyone like me any thought? I am simply a man working in construction. I have erred and failed others. Why would a God like that even pay attention? Peterson slants forward, his eye sharp but gentle. That's what makes it beautiful, Elon. Christianity has nothing to do with worthiness. It's about experiencing love, in spite of our inherent worthlessness. Christ arrived for the broken, the lost, the ones without all the answers, not for perfection. Consider it. He selected tax collectors, fishermen, even sinners to serve him. And he loved them for who they were, not for their capacity. We are speaking of a type of God here. A God seeing every imperfection and still saying, "You are mine," understands you better than you know yourself. Musk's eyes drop momentarily, his face unreadable. The atmosphere seems to be weighted by a hushed intensity, as if both men are on the verge of something significant, yet unseen. Peterson detects this and speaks once more, his voice softer now. "Elon, you have dedicated your life to working toward world change. But have you ever thought about the possibility of a God wishing to transform you? This transformation should not diminish your identity, but rather enhance your fullness. Suppose the biggest change is spiritual rather than technical. What if the most significant metamorphosis is within your own heart rather than in the stars?" Musk says nothing, staring down at the floor. Peterson allows the moment to settle before he speaks. At last, Peterson's voice disturbs the silence, quieter now, but determined. "I will be bold here, Elon," he says. "I want you to think of Jesus Christ, not as a historical person, not as a symbol, but as the live God. He is the one who created you, knows you, and loves you. He is the one who not only provides you with meaning, but also atonement. Nobody expects you to have everything figured out. Perfect is not something you should strive for. The first step is you just saying, 'I'm open.'" Musk raises his eyes to meet Peterson's look. There is a flutter of something, perhaps even sensitivity and interest. He says nothing, yet the stillness seems more like introspection than opposition. Peterson inhales deeply, his manner serene but really honest. "Elon, if you were open, I would want to pray for you before we finish." Musk pauses for a bit, then nods slightly. "All right," he murmurs, his voice nearly a whisper. Peterson lowers his head, his words expressing respect, but also urgency. "Heavenly Father, I owe Elon thanks. I appreciate the gifts you gave him, the mind that aspires to the impossible, and the hands that make it possible. I hope you will show yourself in ways he cannot deny and draw him near to you. Lord, you bring messengers into his life, people who will guide him toward faith and speak truth and love. Open his heart to the grace only you can bestow. This earth is not his only home. Show him that his value comes from you, not his actions. In Jesus' name, I pray." "All right." Musk is silent as Peterson raises his head. His face is unreadable but definitely intelligent. The weight of the prayer hovers in the air, a mute echo of something more than words. Peterson grins gently and speaks in a friendly, motivating voice. "That is all, Elon." Elon was not under any pressure or expectations. It was merely a matter worth considering. Musk nods, his voice understated but sincere. He says only, "I appreciate that." The camera catches a moment of wonderful quiet as the talk concludes, maybe signifying the action of something invisible. One thing is certain, the seeds have been sown, whether or not Musk really adopts faith. And occasionally, all it takes is one conversation to start a path that transforms everything. The conversation delves deeply into topics that are fundamental to human existence: religion, pleasure, and purpose. With his unique combination of intellectual rigor and emotional depth, Jordan Peterson sets the tone with a question that seems to be directed at everyone observing, not just Elon Musk. "Elon," Peterson starts, "you have done more in a single lifetime than most people could dream in 100. You have transformed sectors, stretched the bounds of knowledge, and provided mankind with a picture of the future. But do you find yourself content here? Do you have accomplished? Musk stops, his expression reflective. That's a complex issue, he says. I hardly give happiness any thought. I focus on completing tasks and overcoming challenges. Happiness? Perhaps that is something you only notice in retrospect. I would say right now that my attention is more on advancement than on my own emotions. Peterson nods gently, his eyes narrowing somewhat, as though zeroing in on a thread he is about to untangle. Still, he adds, development without meaning often results in despair. You can still feel empty, yet realize what you have always dreamed of. That is so because, as we understand it, happiness is transient. It relates to conditions, success, and the highs and lows of life. But meaning is more profound. It is what gets us through, even during the worst of times. Elon, you truly connect meaning to faith. Musk's voice becomes somewhat tighter, his analytical temperament bristling at the claim's abstract form. Faith? I'm not certain how this connects. For me, finding meaning stems from achieving something significant and contributing to the advancement of humanity. That's what drives me. Faith seems unneeded for it. Peterson smiles subtly, as though he expected this answer. But why does helping others matter? Why would one find value in this? The instincts of creation, service, and sacrifice are not isolated entities. Their roots are in a greater storyline, one that goes much beyond each of our personal lives. According to the Christian perspective, for instance, we have a purpose since God, who loves us, created us. That love calls us to consider that love in the world and gives our life significance. Without that foundation, we find ourselves struggling to find purpose in our lives, a task that most individuals find overwhelming. Musk backs off, his arms crossed, his attitude dubious, yet interested. I can get how religion comforts people, he says. It lays a structure for life. But is God really necessary to discover purpose? Surely our decisions and behaviors help us establish meaning. Peterson slants forward, his voice becoming sharp with intensity. Sure, we can establish meaning for you. However, it is delicate. It relates to our own achievements, our own efforts, and when those fail, and they will, what then remains? Something outside of ourselves results in a true and permanent purpose. It comes from seeing that we are a part of a larger narrative that assigns even our misery a function. And this is where faith finds expression. It is an anchor, not a crutch. He stops to let his words weigh before picking back up. Let me say this. You have shaped your life around solving grand-scale issues. Everything you do, including energy, transportation, and space exploration, aims to mold the future of humanity. Should you succeed, though, what follows? Should you populate Mars, transform energy, and guarantee the survival of mankind, what then? That ought to be plenty. Conversely, will you still be left wondering, now what? Musk exhales gently, his face detached, as though the inquiry had resonated with him in an unexpected way. I don't know, he adds softly. I suppose I have always thought the job itself would be sufficient. That would be sufficient to change things. Peterson's voice softens and turns nearly paternal. But what if it isn't? Imagine if the difference you create is merely a component of the whole equation. What if the actual inquiry is not simply, what can I do for mankind? But what does it mean to be human? And Elon, I would contend that God alone has the solution to that dilemma. Christianity reminds us that our purpose is to form relationships, not just with each other, but ultimately with Him. All the advancement in the world won't be enough without that link to cover the void. Musk moves in his seat, his face austere but reflective. Peterson feels this and keeps on, his voice soft, yet with calm confidence. Elon, you are looking for future meaning. But meaning resides in eternity, rather than only the future. Christianity presents a picture of life that transcends our present ability to achieve and includes who we are from the perspective of a God who loves us and has a roadmap for us. Most importantly, though, you do not have to earn this. It is not something you can create with all your brilliance or with all your diligence. She is giving me a gift, a free present. All you have to do is acknowledge it. Musk looks down momentarily, his hands resting on his knees, his voice muted. He says at last, "I'm not sure if I can believe that. It feels too abstract. It feels too distant from the environment in which I live." Peterson nods with a stern yet sympathetic tone. "I understand. Faith is not simple, particularly for someone like you, someone accustomed to using facts and reason to address challenges. Still, faith is not about stifling your thinking. It speaks to opening your heart. Being open to the fact that God can understand some things, and we cannot control others, is key." The discussion starts to slow down, but Peterson has one last argument. His voice is steady, with subdued emotion. "Elon, I am not asking you to give up reason. I want you to think of reason and faith as collaborators rather than rivals. Faith improves rather than lessens the work you are doing. It renders it always relevant. And if you're game, it might alter not only your perspective of the planet, but also of yourself." There is a long silence, laden with unspoken tension. At last, Peterson says, almost as an afterthought but with clear sincerity, "I'll be praying for you, Elon. I pray for the right people to come into your life, those who can demonstrate the true essence of faith, and I hope you will take this into account. Faith is not only for other people, it speaks to you as well." Musk nods faintly, his face a mixture of thanks and residual doubt. The discussion concludes with a sense of initiation, despite the lack of an immediate solution. Perhaps it wasn't so much a response as it was a question, one that Musk would eventually pose to himself regarding faith, happiness, and the true purpose of life. When I go back over the exchange between Jordan Peterson and Elon Musk, I find how very common and intimate the discourse was. It's about the search for meaning in our lives, a journey we all travel, regardless of background or beliefs, not only about religion or faith. Undoubtedly intelligent individuals, Musk and Peterson continue to grapple with fundamental questions about morality, life, and purpose. I really connect with the concept that our search through life should be toward significance rather than happiness. It questions the idea that the aim of life is to provide continual pleasure or comfort. Rather, it implies that true fulfillment comes from meaning, that which requires sacrifice, struggle, and deeper knowledge. The main lesson of this film is the importance of critically examining our ideas and values that shape our behavior. Whether we agree with Musk's more objective approach or Peterson's Christian viewpoint, the discussion challenges us to consider closely how our values define our life and the surroundings. It reminds us that the ideas we live by can help to improve society. I kindly ask you to stop and consider your own views. Do you live in line with your values? Are you simply chasing momentary bliss, or are you actively looking for significance in your life? Allow this film to be your invitation to investigate these issues, have important discussions, and maybe even doubt your long-held beliefs. Though it is not simple, the search for purpose is well worth it. So, consider, For you, what would a life motivated by a more profound purpose look like?